A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk all about how I actually take the photos. So the camera settings that I use, where I focus. Obviously I talk about those in other videos, but I'm going to go into detail. I'm going to show you exactly the things that I do to set up that shot. You know, I'll talk about the composition as well, but I'm going to focus on things like aperture, shutter speed, what ISO I use, whether I use a filter or not, and where I focus and what goes through my head when I'm actually choosing those settings. Because I get these questions asked loads, and I know there's a lot of beginners out there that probably just don't know how to set these things up. So hopefully after this video, you'll have a better idea. And I'm in my favourite location, which is Rydal Water in the Lake District, and it's just an amazing morning. It's a little bit cloudy, but there's been some rain, a bit of snow on the hills, and it looks beautiful. Wow. So this is, we just had some storms in the UK, and you can see by this tree just how powerful they were. It's incredible, the power of the wind. So many trees have come down, so many houses and caravans have been ruined as well. It's not great. Reminds you of the power of nature. It really is incredible. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is just record this hut in the background, and there's a few things to think about around the settings of this and position of my camera, so I just want to talk through in as much detail as I can really. So first of all, there were some really nice ripples on the water. Sod's Law says that the wind has started just as I've started recording, which has changed these ripples, which changes the actual shot that I'm going to take. But the ripples at the bottom here, so the ripples sort of down here, were a nice part of the foreground, and then the hut as the background, and then I didn't want to get the sky in the shot. So if I just walk up to my camera here, to do that I had to have quite a long lens and I had to get the right height. So I have got on here my 70, I'm with my dad as well. I'm with my dad, and which is really good fun, coming on a shoot with my dad. Anyway, onto the camera. So I've got my 70-200 lens here, and that is meaning that I can get, if you just look here, I've not got the sky in. So first thing is that I haven't got the sky in, and then you can see the ripples just at the bottom here. I've got like a set of ripples in the shot. So that creates a few technical difficulties because I'm shooting at about 90mm. Obviously I want the hut in focus, but I also want these ripples to be in focus as well. You could argue that it doesn't matter for these ones at the bottom to be in focus, but because it's an easy focus stack to do, and what I mean by that is that this bottom part of the image here, there's an easy line that I can disconnect it from the top part of the image. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot one focusing on the hut and one focusing down here at the bottom. And yeah, it's just about timing it right really, and making sure that I get it when I think the ripples are most aesthetically pleasing. And then the other thing to think about is shutter speed. So I want a reasonably fast shutter speed. So to get that, we'll just have a look at my settings. I'll just go to the camera view and we'll look at the settings. Okay, so to get the right shutter speed, you can see that at the moment I've got 1/25 of a second. I think that's just about quick enough to get the water frozen that's moving at the bottom here. I don't want it to be blurred. I'm shooting at f13 because I want to try and get as much in focus as I can. And then I've also got ISO 400, and I've got ISO 400 because I want to get that fast shutter speed. So basically what I try and do in a scene like this is, my thought process is how fast do I need the shutter speed? And in that I worked out it was about 1/25 of a second. That was through trial and error. Then I think, what's my depth of field, and that dictates my aperture, and then I set my ISO based on those two factors to ensure that I can get a fast enough shutter speed. So it's it's just a process of going through those things. Think about your shutter speed first, then your depth of field, and then set your ISO. Your ISO really should be the last thing you set. What you're trying to do to get the best shot is shoot at a low enough ISO, because obviously you're going to get less noise in the scene. So I'm going to take the shot. Obviously I'll put all those settings up and point out exactly what I did, and then we'll go and find another shot. Okay, I found another composition, and this is lovely. It's a scene I've been back to a few times actually, and I always seem to not quite get the light. Ideally, this would just have a little bit of fog or some nice light just raking through the scene. But this flat light's also really good for shooting waterfalls, because you don't have to worry about shadows too much. So basically, I've got this in the background. I'm shooting at 24mm. And I've got this tree in the foreground. This tree in the foreground is a tricky thing, because you wouldn't be able to focus stack this because it's quite complex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk you through the settings I've got to avoid me having to focus stack this tree and make sure I get the whole scene in focus, all the way from the tree here through to the waterfall right at the back. And yeah, we can look at photo pills as well. Okay, so I'm back up at my camera now, and what I want to do is just talk to you about the depth of field, because this is really important in a shot like this. You know, you've got this tree here, and you're thinking, is it going to be in focus? What aperture do I need to put it on? So the first thing I'm thinking in my head here is, how far away is the tree and what focal length I've got? And focal length makes such a big difference to depth of field. So if you have it on 24mm, you're going to have more in focus than if you have it on 70mm. And I've got it on 24mm at here, and we've got this amazingly useful app called Photo Pills. So if I just show you this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, see what happens if I focus it on the waterfall. The waterfall's about 7 meters away, so I've set at 7 meters there, and it's set at f8. But I actually want to probably go to f13, because I know that's as big a depth of field as I can get on this camera without it getting a little bit blurry with diffraction coming in. So I've set it at f13 at 24mm, and that is going to tell me, if I just go back to the start here, that will tell me, and I've just got it up here so you can see it. So by focusing on 7 meters away, I've got all the way to infinity focused, so all the way back to the end of the waterfall, and the focus is going to drop to a point of acceptable focus of 1.25 meters, which is way in front of this tree. This tree is about 3 meters away. Now the point of acceptable focus I don't think is super sharp, so you need to go double or triple that. So if I double that, that's 2.5 meters. So by shooting at f13 focused on the water, I'll get all the way back to the back of the waterfall and then to this tree. Now if it wasn't close enough, if I wasn't focusing close enough to this tree, then what I do is I just move my focus point a little bit closer, put it in Photo Pills, and hopefully then I'll be able to work out whether I can get it in focus. If the tree's too close to me and I have to focus stack, then I'll just grab my tripod, move away, or try a different composition, because it'll be difficult to do it. You don't really want to go up to anything past I don't think F sort of 15, 16, get into F22 and you're going to get a lot of diffraction. The whole thing is going to be soft and you're going to defeat the whole objective of what you're trying to do. Right, that's a lot. I'm going to take this. I'll show you the settings. I'll show you exactly what I did again, just in case you missed any of that. Okay, the other thing to add on this particular shoot is that I have got a polarizing filter on. So I'm using a polarizing filter because I want to actually reduce the reflection of the water. If I just show you the difference it makes, so if I just put the polarizing filter on, and you can see as I turn it here, the water goes darker. If you compare it to before, when it wasn't so polarized, it's quite light. When I put it on, it darkens the shot. Putting a polarizer on also reduces the exposure as well. quite significantly. So I've gone from an exposure of about half a second to an exposure of about 2 seconds by putting the polarizer on. So often a polarizer is just good enough to use without an ND filter. And quite often I'll just use a polarizer if I know I've got to polarize the water. I usually only use a polarizer to polarize reflection off water or reflection off foliage. Good. Right, I better get the shot. It's I think it's an interesting one. It's quite a technical composition, but I think it'll work. I'm quite excited about seeing it. So it was great fun taking those 2 shots, especially being with my dad as well, and him seeing how I do the videos. We didn't have the best conditions though. There was no atmosphere and no light, so really you need those to get a good shot. But the whole point of the video, and I hope you enjoyed it, was just to try and show you what I go through when I'm choosing settings on my camera and how I go about choosing those settings. Because often there's a lot of things to think about. And I try to explain it a little bit in those 2 photos, but obviously there's a lot of different examples I can give you. So what I want to do is I just want to sort of go over that exposure triangle again, and then I'll show you another couple of examples. So if we just think of the things that can control exposure, and they are, we've got ISO at the top here, we've got shutter speed, and we've got aperture. And basically, in a photo, the 2 things that you're trying to do are get the right shutter speed. So if you want to shoot a fast wave, then you want a fast shutter speed. Or if you want to shoot a wave and get some motion in it, you might want to show a slower shutter speed. So you're going to control shutter speed. And then aperture is going to control your depth of field. So you really want to control these 2 things. When you've set these at what you want, then to get the right exposure, quite often you're using ISO. Now, you're either using ISO or you're using one of the other 2, but by using a combination of these 3, so you want a histogram that sort of looks a bit like, this, so it's pushed to the right a little bit. That's really important. I always go on about push to the right. The reason that you want the histogram pushed to the right is you want to get the most amount of light onto the sensor without overexposing the photo. The more light you get, the less noise you have. So it's really important that. And by controlling ISO, aperture and shutter speed, then you're able to do that. So I just wanted to briefly do that. I'm going to go over this in a lot more detail in a future video. But also in my masterclasses as well, I talk about this a little bit, and I talk about lots more examples like I've just shown here in a huge amount more detail. Okay, so onto a couple of photos. I just want to show you 2 photos that I took when I was in Iceland. The first one is this one here. So this was, as you can see, if I just get it here, this was a 200mm shot, and I shot it at 1/2000th of a second, f4.5 and ISO 1000. So you might think, well, why did you only shoot it at f4.5, or why 2000th of a second? So in this particular shot, what I wanted to do is I wanted to capture the wave. I wanted to get all these little globules in the wave. To do that, because they're moving fast, I needed a fast shutter speed. I wasn't hugely bothered about depth of field because, if you look at this, the birds in the background are actually out of focus, but the wave's in focus. So I tracked the wave coming forward, I shot it at 2000th of a second, and then it was basically to get the right exposure, set the ISO, what I needed to be, and in this case it was ISO 1000. So what I was trying to do is get the right exposure by combining ISO, aperture and shutter speed. So the next one I want to show you is this one. So this was a shot where there was this water coming in, I was trying to shoot these waves, and it was pretty manic really, because there was lots of things going on. So I knew I wanted about a 1 second exposure because I'd experimented, and that I think worked best for the water and the waves breaking. It gave the feeling that I wanted. So in this case, I shot at 1.3 seconds, so that was set in stone. But I wanted quite a lot of depth of field in it, because I wanted, the beginning of this iceberg here all the way back to the waves in the background in focus, and I was shooting at 22mm. So I needed f13. Now it just happened, I don't think I had a filter on here, it just happened that that was ISO 64. But if I couldn't get a 1.3 second f13, if that overexposed it even at ISO 64, then I would have had to put an ND filter on to reduce the exposure so I could get the right exposure. It fitted within the histogram correctly. So basically, you're just trying to control those three things. Sometimes, like this one here, you might have to add a filter, but that's what it is really. Sometimes it's really easy because there's no wind, you're shooting in the wood, the shutter speed just doesn't matter at all, so you don't worry about that too much. That's another variable you can change. So you've got that and the ISO to change to your heart's content, and then it's only the aperture that's stuck in stone. It is really easy. You've just got to go out and practice and mess about with things. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I just want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. It really makes a big difference to me. Obviously, I do these videos for free, and if somebody can come in and sponsor it, then that's amazing. So Squarespace are a fantastic platform. I use it all the time for my own online store. And if you're looking to set up a blog, or maybe a portfolio of your photos, or maybe you just want to set up an online store and start a mini business, then Squarespace make it super easy. So if you're looking to get a website with Squarespace, then make sure you use the offer code Nigel, or you can go to squarespace.com/Nigel. Thanks ever so much for watching, and until next Sunday, bye.